All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Pursuit of Ownership. It is Peyton Keller here, and I'm with Tyler. Tyler, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Feeling really good to be back on. It's been a couple weeks since we recorded, and I'm super excited for this one. Been having a lot of time interfacing with these guests, but haven't done a whole lot of it on record, at least not recently. So I'm super excited for the audience to get a little bit of updated what's going on in these awesome people's lives.
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a full house here today. Lots of times it's two, maybe three people total on the podcast. We got a whopping four today. So we have Alex Sharp and Clay Schwinke. Alex, how you doing?
Doing great, Peyton. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Just a great day here to record a podcast. What's been going on with you?
Man, just living the dream. Navigating these post-COVID waters and trying to get the practice back to its normal way of being. With it being October, we're in that COVID hangover where we didn't have any recalls in April. Therefore, 6 months later, we're able to have a large amount of capacity for new patients. We'll put it that way to put the
That's a
silver
good
lining
thing in
on it.
some ways.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. But no, things
it's
are
all
going well.
perspective.
Yeah, it's yeah, potato, but it's good.
That's awesome. Glad to hear it. Clay, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Doing well. I actually just came off a trip from visiting Alex down in Arkansas. So, and that
Interesting.
was absolutely amazing. I got to stay with him and his wife Lizzie and see his practice in action. And yeah, I had to see it for myself. I've heard a lot of good things about his practice, and they were all true.
Really, and the bad things you heard also true.
Yeah, also true as well.
True, but
Okay,
more so,
very well.
even more so.
You can't
I want to
do
hear
them
all
justice.
about it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that. That sounds like a good time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
tell me about this
so
trip, Clay. Yeah.
well, I am still practicing near Kansas City, Missouri. I'm still in that practice that I want to buy. COVID kind of put some things on hold, but we're still in conversations. Um, I think it's still the practice that I want to buy. There's a lot of potential. So, in the meantime, I've recently kind of focused my time towards helping shared practices a little bit more and actually helping Alex. And so I decided I needed to go visit him in person and kind of hash some more things out and see his practice.
Absolutely. That's great. Um, so I guess on the subject of helping Alex with some shared practices things, what have you guys been kind of working on in the background?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting stuff that shared practices is doing right now and in the future. And I'll let Alex kind of get into a little bit of what we're kind of working on, but he is the director of the shared practices mastermind. So if those of you who aren't familiar with Mastermind, it's essentially where a group of like-minded people kind of get together and really changing mindsets and bringing just a lot of value. So Alex can kind of talk about that a little bit more too.
We've had it going for about 4 months so far, and it's been just a meteoric amount of growth, not only in our group, but also in the members of the group. Our whole premise is to take people from where they start to where they want to get to. We establish where's your point A, and then how can we help you get to point B? Because we realize that in the dental space, there's a huge opportunity for personal development, and that's often a stone that doesn't get turned over for a lot of dentists and people that want to be practice owners. We learn about so much of the how of what to do, but we need to really focus on becoming who our practices need us to be for them to be successful. Because it's easy to think, oh, I can plug myself into any old situation, but in reality, it's hard to really plan for and and orient yourself in a way that you can deal with all the myriad stresses and difficulties that pop up in practice ownership. And what we want to do is provide a space for people to troubleshoot and figure out, okay, what do I need to develop in myself skill wise to become the leader and the manager that my practice needs me to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one thing I've seen and found very interesting about the mastermind is that you can post about a very specific issue that you're having in your practice, and you can get some very, very good feedback on people that have run into a similar situation, a similar circumstance. And you don't have to deal with a lot of the noise that you would get in a typical, let's say, if you're comparing to like a Facebook group or something, like you can get a post there and just you end up with an absolute dumpster fire of comments and just people drawing you every different direction. Whereas with the mastermind, it's people that are all working towards a similar goal. They're all very focused and driven. And I've just found it very impressive that, all the things that it offers.
Well, the reality is that if you're listening to shared practices or if you've listened to our podcast for any length of time, we're all drinking the same Kool-Aid. We're all seeing things through a very similar lens to where if you're in our ecosystem, there's certain things that are almost taken for granted that you know about our approach. And then you also know, okay, this stuff over here doesn't work. Like, you know that hygiene's a good thing to have. You know that ownership is a good thing to pursue. And I don't know, like you cut through a lot of the noise and a lot of the scarcity mentality that you see so pervasive in a lot of those garden variety Facebook groups that are all over the place. And with the mastermind, what's really cool is that you get to be interfacing with people that are in your specific shoes, basically. So if you're a solo practice owner, you're in a group with other solo practice owners trying to achieve similar goals. If you're a multi-doc practice, guess what? You're in a group with other multi-doc practice owners that are trying to manage associates and grow and solve the same problems. So you're not on an island, and far from it. You're interfacing with like-minded docs 24/7 if you want to.
Yeah, and I don't want it to come across like everything's all sunshine and rainbows and everyone's all positive and no one talks. I mean, there's even a portion of the mastermind where once a month, Matt Garino, the famous Matt Garino, he gives a hot seat call. So one of the mastermind members actually, we take a deep dive into their practice. And we kind of come up with issues and figure out, okay, what is this person dealing with? What problems are they having? How can we all kind of collectively come together and just kind of not really roast the person, but really kind of ask the hard questions? I think from what I've seen, the hot seats, I mean, they have just been breakthrough after breakthrough for the people. One, getting that advice on the hot seat, and two, just being there and learning, right? Like, you're listening to this high level conversation about difficult problems that practice owners have. So yeah, hashtag Matt Garino money. Yeah.
That's good. So one thing that kind of strikes me is it's like, if you talk sort of surface level about what Mastermind is, it's all these people that are in similar situations, like-minded. They're coming together. They're collectively answering each other's questions and trying to sort out different things. Like, you could use the same vocabulary to describe a Facebook group. Like, it sounds almost the same. Like, I'm in a private group and, the title is such and such making money and such. And these are how we, people just randomly post questions and there's 100 comments below it about, these people's different takes on how you solve this problem. But obviously it's not that surface level. Obviously there's something much deeper and more intimate going on in these mastermind conversations. And my initial impression is that, first of all, there's an actual, there's a microscope that gets put on each person in these groups. And, when you're not just having like a generic problem, it's not like you're just taking this problem that you have in your practice and trying to phrase it in such a way that's of interest to other people that they might be experiencing. You're saying, this is the problem I'm having with such and such hygienist and such assistant. And, everyone in the group understands the context of that, and they can give me a more, detailed and helpful solution for such and such problem. Does that make sense? Like, I guess I'm just trying to illustrate for people, how much deeper does this go, and why is it more helpful than saying being in a group of 10,000 people that are all practice owners?
Well, it comes down to accountability, where we hold each other accountable. We hold each other's feet to the fire. In shared practices, in our opinion, the gold standard for improving yourself, improving your practice, we're big believers in coaching. We're big believers in the value of one-on-one coaching. And if that's not right for you and you're in your current place in your journey, then the mastermind is surely the best approach, because you have so many people that are basically each other's family as it relates to where we're at in our journeys. And, we know what the standard for excellence is in each other's solo pod or group pod. And so we know that, if someone's not performing or someone committed to a goal in last month's Zoom call and they haven't been making progress, then, well, why haven't you been doing that?
Right.
We have that level of trust and level of accountability with each other to where we know that if we're not following through and making good on our commitments, then some of our fellow members are going to be asking why. And that doesn't happen in some Facebook group that doesn't have any kind of calibration of values.
Yeah, and I think another aspect to it is you mentioned trust, and along with trust comes transparency. And the more honest and open you can be about what is really at the heart of a problem that you're presenting, the less filters you pass that through, like you would if you're going to be posting publicly to a group. The more helpful advice you're going to get and the more specific advice you're going to get. And I think that's how things get really personalized and granular as to, the things that people are actually going through, instead of just, making a problem something that seems palatable for Facebook and then getting like a whole range of answers that you really have no real compass as to whether or not they're actually answers you should be following. I think there's a lot of value to that you can't really get in that sort of forum.
Yeah, and I think that's like, there's vulnerability in that, right? Like you,
for sure.
Yeah. And that's where all these breakthroughs are coming from, right? Like it's so personalized. And so this is, I'm having this issue and I know the other people in this group understand and can look through the lens of shared practices and can give me the best advice. And that's, it comes with the vulnerability, it comes with the accountability. But yeah, it's one of the main aspects of the mastermind.
Because with the mastermind, we're not trying to pump up our highlight reel. Like none of the members have to put on fronts. None of the members have to parade around, things to try to garner positive attention. It's about improvement. It's about getting to where we want to go. Because that's, after all, life is short, and every month that we don't move towards our goals is a month that just stinks of missed opportunity. And so, someone's goals might not be to necessarily make a ton of money or have success as measured by other people. It's how you define it. Do you want to have more time off? Do you want to have more time flexibility? Do you want to have the biggest practice in town? Like, depending on what your goals are, we can help you get there.
Yeah. I think it's super cool you brought that up, because I feel like with so many different, different programs, coaches, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, the end goal is just make more money. I feel like that's what a lot of them come down to. And not to say that making money is bad, but if you just want to be in the office 3 days a week, then let's build your practice and your life around that. At Shared Practices, we're not trying to push you towards any specific thing. We want you to get out of life what you want. And I think it's really unique that's kind of how we've built this program here.
Yeah, it's you say that. It sounds simple. Whatever you want, we want to make it happen. But it's like, I think that's kind of the hardest thing for people too. Is that I don't know, and it might be a situation where they're a student or they're an associate, and they're like, "Man, I'm just trying to figure out this dentistry thing. I don't even know what I want 2 years from now, 5 years from now." I think that's where the real big holdup for a lot of people is they don't know what they want. And I think that's kind of with shared practices, we kind of have to start there. And for a lot of people, that's the hardest step to take. I think the mastermind, I think you can see the transformations of people like going through okay, I think I want this. And then they're seeing everybody else and they're seeing what that means. And I think people are, they're getting better insight and really, really drilling down on what are they actually wanting for their practice. Or are they wanting less time off? Are they wanting more time off? Sorry. Are they wanting more money? Whatever it is, I think getting that clarity, it's kind of the most important step. And I think everyone in there, I think, is going to attest to just the fact of how much clarity it gives them.
Well, there's a reason why the vision component has been such a focus of George's recently, because he's realized that for a lot of the content that's been posted in seasons past, the vision component is the missing link for a lot of people, where you could just say getting into practice ownership period is the way to go. But really, one step beyond that is think about what your ideal scenario is, and then search for that practice or search for that opportunity for a startup. And step one of finding that vision is first educating yourself as to what the options are. If for most people that came out of dental school in the last 5 or 10 years, most people don't really know what the options are when you're in school. And that's one thing that we're so excited about in the Mastermind is in the upcoming months, we're going to be opening things up to students and pre-owners. And one of our primary goals with that is to help educate the students and pre-owners as to here are the different avenues that you can go down in terms of practice ownership. And we want to educate you about what your vision could be, not to direct you in a certain way, but to illuminate the possibilities. Because so many people come out of dental school with the propaganda of you got to go corporate, you got to pay off your student loans as soon as possible. And then that's the only way to get into practice ownership is to pay off your student loan debt. That's what all the corporate people would have you believe. But we want to educate the next generation of dentists in a more abundant mindset.
Yeah, and I think that students, they do get exposure, or they have the option of having that exposure by listening to podcasts, sure. And you can sort of form your own avatars about what you think dental success looks like. You might see it on Instagram, you might see it on a podcast or something like that, but you don't really know what those people's lives are like. You get a sort of publicized version of that. And from the mastermind calls that I've been in on and been listening to, I think you get a real peer into what people's challenges really are, something they might not be so vocal about in a public forum or on record. And I think there's just so much value to that, because you really get to know, what the person behind that position is really like. It's not just a number of how many practices they own or how much they did in revenue. Like, you're really getting a better understanding of what it's like to be that person and in that position. And then you can sort of reflect that onto yourself and say, well, am I like this person? Like, will I be fulfilled in that position? And I think that it just keeps on going back to that honesty, that transparency, and like really getting on a more personal level with those types of people gives you a better idea of what's actually possible and what might be right for you, instead of just sort of guessing.
Definitely.
Yeah, sure.
And one thing I've seen too is it's not just the people outside of shared practices that are transparent on the mastermind. I mean, you'll see Alex come in, say, hey, I've been having this problem lately. Do you guys have any ideas? Or here's what I'm trying to do to fix it. And same thing with George. I mean, I feel like, I know for me, especially before I joined the team, I kind of put these guys up on a pedestal. I was like, they do everything perfect. Like, they don't have any issues. Like, it's crazy what they're able to achieve. But I think it's also very empowering to see that, I mean, they run into issues too, and they're willing to ask others for help. And I think that vulnerability piece is very important, like you guys have been saying.
Absolutely, because without the vulnerability, then it's all show. It's all a dog and pony show. You have to really get down to the nitty gritty and admit, this is where I need help. This is where I'm struggling, because no true improvements could be made to your practice if you don't first acknowledge, here's what's wrong. Acknowledgement is the first step. And if you're acting like everything is perfect, or you're too proud to seek counsel from those who are doing things well, then you're gonna be stuck in that perpetual rut, and you're gonna be on the hamster wheel that so many dentists are for their whole careers.
Right. And you can always find like a given problem or something that could be improved within your practice, and like you'll research and find different ways that you can go about solving it. But you're not always entirely sure that that's the problem that is actually in front of you, or that that's really the one that's actually going to fix what it is that you're wanting out of your practice. And that's because you have your own internal bias. You can learn all these different ways to solve different problems, but you're going to be biased towards picking certain problems that you probably like to deal with more, that seem more palatable for you. And I think having someone else there to sort of hold you accountable to what might be going on has some value to it, because they might convince you to tackle a problem that you didn't really want to face head on. And that's something that really requires support, I think.
Yeah, I think having an objective view of a situation, that to me, I mean, and I've seen it time and time again. I make decisions based on emotion, based on fear, based on things that the stories I tell myself, and having that objective, whether that be a coach, whether it be a mastermind, like having that value of saying like, hey, look, like you told me you want to do this based on your goals. You're doing X, Y, and Z. I mean, this is kind of going against that. And why don't you think about this? I mean, that objective view really takes all that emotion and fear out of making decisions, which you kind of need an objective point of view when you're making huge life decisions like this, buying a practice, what to do in the practice, how to get it more successful. Yeah.
Would you guys be willing to share some of the breakthroughs that you've had in participating in the mastermind, like in your own dental lives and otherwise?
I think a big one for me is continuing to see, well, George gives more of a behind the scenes look into some of the details about his practice than what you'll find anywhere else. But one thing that George is a master of is delegation. That's no secret. But the way he's been able to delegate and train members of his team to take on some of the responsibilities that a lot of owner dentists have is pretty masterful. I mean, it's nothing short of amazing to see that. And I've prided myself on having a really strong, robust leadership team, but my leadership team has traditionally worked with me in the practice still as like a safety blanket, so to speak. And with George's practice, he runs it in such a way to where he's not physically in the building the majority of the time. So that requires a whole different order of magnitude as far as the team leadership goes. And so it's been cool to learn his approach to not only delegation, but also time management. That's something that I've picked up that I've been able to implement right away.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, I mean, this is, this gets personal, right? Like I obviously love shared practices and have listened to it for a long time, and owning a practice is what I want to do. Finding the right practice is important. I think I've found that practice. Is ownership going to be as soon as I would like? Well, probably not. But I think figuring out my vision and understanding, hey, this is really what I want. This is what I said I wanted from the beginning. I still want this. It's the size of practice that I want. It's the area my wife and I want to live in. And really getting, again, like I said, that objective point of view, saying like, hey, yeah, Clay, like based on what your goals are, like this is kind of the one. So that's me in my personal situation. I think that's just the breakthrough I got. It was just, it's okay. Everyone has their own journey. But the thing is that I'm surrounding myself with like-minded people that understand why I'm making this decision, and just having that support system, essentially you guys. So yeah, it's been really nice.
Well, and guess what? You're getting to see all of the other multitudes of ways to practice because you're interacting with people that have done startups, people that have done successful super solos that are one doctor collecting north of $1 million in revenue. You're talking to people that own multiple practices. You're seeing pretty much a representative cross section of all the different practice styles out there. And you were fortunate enough to say, look, I've seen behind the scenes, I've seen behind the curtain on all these different types because I've seen everybody's practice by numbers. And yep, I still want what I want. So it stood up to the scrutiny that you wouldn't have been able to test it with otherwise.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think another thing too is, especially with high achieving people like ourselves, and I feel like a lot of listeners to the show, if something doesn't work out exactly how you planned, you kind of let it mean you try to let it mean something about you. And I think it's very important to not do that. And that's like another part, like you said, looking at the situation objectively. Just because you don't buy a practice the first year out of school doesn't mean anything about you. And you're still the same person. You're still shooting for the same goal. And I think a lot of high achieving people really struggle with that. So I think it's really cool that you've came to that conclusion. That it's like, okay, like I've identified this is what I want. And you're willing to maybe wait a little bit longer than planned, but you're okay with it. And I think it's really cool that you've come to that conclusion.
Peyton, I totally agree with you, and I appreciate the compliment. I think I wouldn't have gotten there, and I keep saying this, I wouldn't have gotten there without that support system of those people who I know and trust that like Alex, like he's done what I want to do, and I'm looking at what he's done, and I mean, Alex is an incredibly hard worker. He is he just loves the process. He loves personal development. He loves making himself better, making the people around him better. And again, that's all true. But I look and I see his practice, and it's pretty similar to mine. And I'm like, oh, wow, man, if Alex can do this and he's following the same steps I am, and he's looking through the same lens I am, that just gives me so much. I mean, it empowers me to know that I can do it myself. So, yeah.
Well, things are a lot easier when you have a roadmap. And I'm not saying that every roadmap for every path is contained within someone else in our ecosystem, but there are elements of a lot of people's journeys that almost anyone can learn from. Because really what it comes down to is everyone wants to shorten their learning curve. Like I think about my path to ownership, I felt like I was slacking because I bought almost 3 years out of school. And then everyone coming out of school now has had their learning curve shortened because of the preponderance of all the podcast episodes and all the different ways to educate yourself now. And so you can come out of school knowing so much more than you could have known coming out of school 5 years ago. It's pretty amazing. And I think that there's a big crop of people that want to actually leverage all these tools that are available. And granted, the Mastermind is just one of many of those types of tools, but we feel like it's the best one.
Definitely. Yeah. It's just an awesome way for a bunch of like-minded people to interact and make the best of their careers. So
one thing that I've been kind of poking around at in my mind, and this is something we've been talking about for some time, is, how do we extend, the things that are happening in the Mastermind with people who are currently owning practices, right? Like when you own a practice, there's all kinds of little things that can pop up, and there's big things too. And there's always something to be covered, something to be talked about. How does that translate? How can we imagine that it translates for students? If we have students in a Mastermind, what sort of things do you think we'll be able to work through for students? What sort of challenges are we going to be able to come to them with? Because, I kind of think about, all these different students. They're essentially like, dental schools are different, right? And it very much depends on which one you're going through, which program you're going through, where you're at in the program. Are you preclinical or are you clinical? What kind of things can we really imagine would come out of a student Mastermind? How does that translate, do you think?
I think you can look back to shared practices genesis. How did shared practices start? Angst. Pre-owner,
right.
Dental student, angst. Pure and simple. And so whether you're a D1 or a D4, there's something to be gleaned from people that are further ahead of you in your journey. There's topics that can be covered. There's ways to maximize your time before you get into practice ownership, whether it's reading a personal development curriculum or starting the process of flexing your muscles, looking at practices to buy. All those things require repetitions. All those things require time expenditure and the investment of your energy to really get good at. You're not going to become Tony Robbins after reading his first book. You're not going to become George Hariri after looking at your very first practice. It doesn't work that way. And so you need time, and you need the requisite 10,000 Malcolm Gladwell hours to get good at any of these skills. And so what better time to start than as a dental student?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think what students, I think the biggest thing for me in dental school and what kind of helped me and really finding shared practices and finding other like-minded people was being able to see the forest through the trees. There's a lot of stuff, especially now in the post-COVID world, right, that dental students have to deal with. I'm glad I'm not a dental student. But the thing,
don't rub it in. Come on.
Oh man, you are.
You are
inviting a conversation you do not want to have, man. I'm sorry.
But there's no, right? Like this is just my point. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that it doesn't seem like it's ever going to end. I'm never going to graduate, but that time it will come. And I think utilizing your time in dental school and being able to see the forest through the trees, go through dental school with an ownership mindset.
Yeah. What
does that look like? What does my practice vision look like? What do I envision for myself? Do I want to live in a big city, in the suburbs, out in rural areas? Like all these things, actually sitting down, thinking about them, and really kind of using like-minded people as a sounding board to really kind of keep you accountable. But also, a rising tide lifts all boats. So if you're with a group of people who want to be better and they're trying to find the same things you are, I think that's only going to make your journey easier. And again, like Alex said, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. I just think utilizing your time in dental school by finding things like the Mastermind, that's only going to make everything so much easier once you get out of dental school.
So many people in dental school, as speaking for myself at least, I tended to suffer in silence in dental school, where I felt like I was on an island all by myself. No one else understands. Family doesn't understand. Friends don't understand. Everyone else is more successful than me. How did these guys that graduated 10, 20 years ago, they must have been way smarter than me because I'm really not enjoying dental school at all. What's wrong with me? But if you're smart enough to have a network of people that are in the same boat as you or that have accomplished the things that you want to accomplish, then Clay's metaphor of seeing the forest through the trees is very apt, because you see it's been done before and people have come through the psychological torture of dental school and come out the other side and been very successful.
Yeah, and you can suffer a lot more loudly, I think, when you have that sort of support group. Suffering in silence is, second to none in terms of misery. I Peyton and I were actually kind of talking about it. There's kind of a flip side to all this, where yes, it's nice to be able to commiserate with other like-minded people about what you're going through, and to be more honest about that in a way that people aren't always willing to do, say on Instagram or a podcast or something like that. But the other side is, when you're getting inspired by all these people about what you can be doing after dental school, sometimes that can make the journey seem a lot longer. And I've got to be honest, I was telling Peyton just the other day, I have never felt further from graduation the entire time I've been in dental school, and I'm closer than I've ever been. It has been hard. And it's nice because I can talk to people about that. And it's not just people within like my nuclear family. At my school, it's people that are out there and they've been through it before, and some of them are going through it currently. But it is a double-edged sword, because when you have a very good idea of what it's going to look like after you've reached that light at the end of the tunnel, and you're not having this impending feeling that it's a train, it becomes anxiety-inducing in a way, because it's just like, man, when is that going to happen? Like people are saying, oh man, you're almost done, like you're wrapping up. But the more clear you become on the things that you want and the things that you don't have, and you realize how wide that gap is, and the more you've raised your ceiling for things that you could be doing outside, it's really hard when you're still like sort of within the walls of dental school and having to reel yourself back in and get more like invested into the sort of the day-to-day, the dental school, that sort of culture of immediacy that it reels you into. It's a difficult thing for me, and I've been struggling with it a lot recently, and it's been nice to have people to kind of have as a soundboard for that. So Peyton, I think you actually raised up that conversation.
Oh yes, that hits way too close to home for me. Yeah, I feel like every time whether I hang out with shared practices guys, go visit someone's practice, whatever it is, when I go back to school on Monday and I'm setting up a chair with all the plastic bags and going to the dispensary, I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's worse. It's just, I can't.
Please, sir, may I have some Septicane?
Oh my gosh. And then they're like,
nope, they don't even give that out. They don't even give that out.
No.
He's
No,
being
that's
yes, that's
contraband,
true.
dude.
Oh gosh.
No, you gotta steal those from like the oral surgery residents and keep them in your locker and go to a guy to get your Septicane. That's not true. Don't quote me on that. But
No, I had to go to a different floor
like
today
many things.
to get Septicane.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Jeez.
like if you can use that angst to propel you forward, it's definitely very, 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 very powerful. I know for me, like I'll see students in my class all the time. Like at the first opportunity they can get up and leave from clinic, they're gonna do it. But if you're looking at this time, it's like, hey, this is time where I'm learning. This is gonna help me once I graduate. And granted, doing things for the first time in clinic is stressful. Like doing anything for the first time is stressful. But when you have someone over your shoulder, someone you can go to if you need help, get those reps in. Like learn as much as you possibly can, because I highly doubt there'll ever be another time in your life where you'll have that amount of support available, at the drop of a hat. So
yeah,
it's definitely super, super helpful.
Well, that's the irony about it. Like you get so angsty and so ready to get out of school that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't be put through these paces anymore. This is terrible. But that is the ironic part of it, is that by knowing what is on the other side, knowing what awaits you after graduation, that can almost strengthen your resolve to say, you know what, yeah, I'm going to stick around this extra hour and try to put in this extra procedure or observe this extra wisdom tooth extraction in the oral surgery department, because that's going to really pay dividends later on when I'm doing stuff that other dentists don't do.
And I think having other people that have similar goals that you can kind of reflect that with can kind of help you stay on that horse, because it's not always the easiest thing to do. A lot of times it is easier to just take off early and, miss out on whatever that experience was and whatever you could have gotten from it. Because a lot of times you just want to have a breather, take a break. It is just more about surviving dental school than it is thriving afterward. And when you really have thriving afterward in your mind all the time, it's not so much surviving, you're taking advantage of the experiences that are in front of you in dental school. And they are there to be had if you're willing to look for them. And again, that just comes back to needing support for that. Like, I don't know why you would want to suffer in silence, as Alex was alluding to earlier. Like if you had the option to have other people to bounce that off of and to experience that with and to empower them as they empower you, like, I don't know why you would choose to just kind of do it on your own. It's just, it's exhausting.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. I know for me, like I've always said, like, okay, push yourself to where you're uncomfortable, and it's so easy to give advice, but actually doing it is a whole different ballgame. So just having people,
that's for sure.
Having people to back you up and tell you, like, hey, like you said you're going to do this, like, let's do it. It's very, very important and very helpful.
What are you guys hearing students saying that they're wanting, that they're asking for? What are the students saying?
I think more than anything, students like Tyler and I want to interact with similar people. They don't want to be average. They don't want to get advice from, I'm not saying that all school advice is bad, but I feel like a lot of it is. And they would just want to interact with, got Tyler laughing on the other end here. But yeah,
just tell it like it is, Payton. Jesus.
I mean, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it here.
Your professors aren't listening to this. It's okay.
I guarantee you they're not. They're not. Yeah. It's okay. But I see what you're saying.
What's a podcast?
Exactly. There's probably like 5 or 6 maybe out of your class that like have, like some sort of like, hey, yeah, I've thought about after dental school, and here's what I want to do. There's just not that many, and so I think a lot of people end up just suffering in silence, like Alex had to do. Just, I know. I feel so bad.
I think you turned out okay, personally,
without any of this.
Yeah.
Dude, but seriously, what I was telling Clay this weekend when he was here is that I really blundered into it. Like the whole thing that changed my mindset was going to Voices of Dentistry the first time in 2017 and hearing what those podcast guys were all doing and hearing what was possible. Like I heard Richard speak back before I knew who he was at that meeting. And, now it's so easy and the podcasts are so ubiquitous that you can shorten that learning curve, like I talked about, so steeply. But yeah, everyone has their jumping off point. Everyone has that point, whether it's in school or after school, where they see like, okay, this is what I want to do. They have that powder keg moment where the fuse gets lit and they're like, you know what, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a solo practice owner. I'm going to be a group practice owner, or I'm going to own multiple offices. And once you hit that moment of inspiration, then there's really no turning back.
Alex, did you say that Voices of Dentistry was kind of the turning point for you? That was when you stumbled into all of this?
100%. And I got invited to that meeting. I'd never listened to a podcast in my life. I went to the meeting not really knowing what a podcast was, but my buddy invited me, and I started listening to all the heavy hitting podcasts, with Shared Practices chief among them. And this was pre-George, which dates me, but no, it was awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that same deal happened with me. Voice of Dentistry 2020, I got to meet a bunch of the Shared Practices guys, and that meeting was kind of what turned the corner for me. I mean, I was listening to podcasts quite a bit before that, but I don't really think anyone knew who I was. I hadn't met anyone in person. All the podcast people I had up on a pedestal, and it was just really cool to go there and just talk to people. Like, at the end of the day, they're just people, and I don't.
Yeah.
It was very cool to see that they were so open and willing to talk, because I feel like at a lot of conferences, you see the person talk and then they're gone. Whereas Voice of Dentistry is almost the opposite. It puts emphasis on the outside of the presentations and all that different kind of stuff. So if you're on the fence about going to a conference, just go to Voice of Dentistry, and I feel like it'll really change your mind.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you listen to the hours and hours of the same voices, and you just kind of create something in your head that you've been in my ears for hours upon hours. And then it just they're like an actual human being. They're, they have all the same fears. They went through the same struggles, maybe different struggles than you.
And they're shorter in person.
Or taller if it's Alex.
Unless they're Alex Sharp. Alex picks up all the height that everyone else loses.
Yes.
He just every time that expectation. Yeah, it does. It does. It's hard to lose Alex at a conference. That's what I tell people. You're never going to lose him.
No.
You'll know immediately whether or not he's there.
Dude, I'm so not sneaky. Whatever the opposite of sneaky is, that's me.
Ponderous, cumbersome. I don't know.
Lumbering.
Something like that.
Lumbering.
Yeah,
lumbering. That's a good one.
That's good.
Oh man.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think just going to Voices of Dentistry and meeting these people in person and realizing that all these people are totally real. And there's nothing. It's funny. I think a lot of people ascribe sort of a celebrity status to some people in podcasting. And it's funny, when you actually get to know these people, that to think that I ever thought that way is funny. There was definitely a time where I would have been more psyched to meet even Share Praxis people than a more legitimate celebrity that has a lot more money and a lot more fans. And, and now that I know you guys, it's wow, you're just bros, just that have just a bunch of
dudes,
microphones and prefer to spend your nights talking to each other on record, and there's something so inspiring about that at the same time, though, because it takes away that sort of unicorn factor, and takes away this assumption that these people are special. And yes, they are special, but they're not special in such a way that you could not attain it yourself if it's something you wanted to do, if it were something you were willing to endeavor to do. And so it's something I really invite people to entertain, is that it's not just about listening to these people. It's about figuring out how you can be more like them in a way that suits you. And I think that, to tie it back into Mastermind, that's part of it, because you're actually interfacing with these people and you're getting to know them, and you're taking away some of that veneer of the showmanship that kind of goes along with some of this. And you see what's real, and you can see it for yourself, and it becomes a lot easier to visualize those types of things.
Well, the accessibility factor is what I don't think we've touched on enough, is that within the Mastermind, you have so many people, so many experiences, such breadth of knowledge at your disposal, at your fingertips. And everyone truly has more of a servant mindset of how can I help? How can I further this person's career along? How can I shorten the learning curve? How can I enact some type of improvement in this person's practice? And it's not us being out for ourselves. It's truly like, how can we jointly, communally move the needle forward?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about.
For anyone who hasn't met me in person, I make a lot of sarcastic comments, and I held this one back, but I just can't. Tyler, did you really use the word veneer in a non-dental context?
In a dental
think I said
podcast.
I believe I said facade. I don't believe I said veneer. You can wind that back.
We'll have to go back and check that one.
Roll the tape back.
And you're taking away some of that veneer.
I heard veneer.
Okay, I had nothing important. I had to get that out there.
I'm just going to be echoing what Alex and Tyler and Payton have been saying. It's just, and I said this before, a rising tide lifts all boats. And another famous, maybe contrite quote that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But I mean, I think that goes back to the mastermind where it's like, it's not it's not the blind leading the blind. It's, there are people, some seriously successful people that are there. They can help you, that, like Alex said, they just want to, how can we serve this person? Or do we need to change their mindset? I think in being around that is kind of contagious, because then you start to think like that too. You start to say, okay, how can I help the people around me? How can I become better? How can I help my team become better? How can I help my family become better? I mean, it's kind of contagious. So it only helps.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I just want to say, I really appreciate you guys coming on and being willing to share all this. I mean, I know that a lot of the things that happen in the mastermind can be a bit personal and real. And, for you guys to be willing to come on and do that in a more public forum is, it doesn't go unappreciated.
Well, thank you for having us, Tyler. Because I mean, in the few short months that we've had the mastermind running, it's grown leaps and bounds, not only in the number of people that are participating, but also in the quality of the interactions that we've been lucky enough to have. So it's getting better by the day, and we're excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. And I think that too, with shared practices mantra and the pace of the way things change in people's practices, like it doesn't really happen overnight. And the longer you guys do these things and the longer you protract those changes and see ultimately what they culminate in, it's going to be a lot more impressive too. I mean, some of these things take 6 to 9 months, right? Like that's generally how coaching goes. That's, how long it really takes to see the results of some of the seeds that you end up sowing. So I'm really excited to see all the differences you guys make in the masterminding.
Well, thanks for having us, Tyler. We appreciate you taking the time out of your night and just recording with some guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a pleasure catching up, and I hope the audience enjoyed it as well.